Have you ever made a mistake and really beat yourself up about it afterwards? For lots of people, the after effects of having made a mistake can last for days, weeks, and sometimes even years. Many of us won't explore new possibilities or opportunities because we're still caught in the distortion of the shame of a mistake made long ago, or afraid of making a mistake in the future. Is it possible to break through the paralysis of the fear of making mistakes? Today, Tia and I discuss what causes the fear of making mistakes from spirit perspective and how to shift from fear into taking advantage of the potential of the learning opportunities that mistakes can provide. And after the discussion, we get to the most important part of this episode. The group frequency calibration at the end is where frequency work happens and where change actually occurs. So be sure to listen to that. Without releasing distortion patterns targeted by the GFC, the change you want will be more difficult to attain because you haven't addressed the root of the issue. My name is Karen Cheong, and today in Mastering Your World Through Frequencies, we're discussing learning from mistakes. Hi guys, I just wanted to let you know that we have some gardening going on in the background, so you may hear some noise. And also, it has been a little while since we have seen Tia because Chris and I have been away in Mexico for a couple of months, and we've taken a little break from filming. So for those of you who didn't know that, we haven't been seeing Tia in order to film for a while, so she looks a little different. So she is 6 months pregnant.
Yeah.
Woo! And so if you notice that, she hasn't suddenly gained 50 pounds. She's actually pregnant with a 6-month-old child.
Yes. I've not been eating a ton of burritos. Yeah. A lot of changes, a lot of shifts, a lot of exciting new things. But we're back, and here we are.
Here we are.
And so today we're talking about mistakes.
Yeah.
Right? So a lot of people might think of mistakes as a negative thing.
Yeah.
And I know you have a lot of insight on how it can actually be positive
and
how that relates to frequency.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
So I think the thing is, a lot of people fear mistakes. I've noticed that, right?
Yeah.
Because people don't want to feel stupid. They don't want to be judged by other people. There's a lot of fear around and shame around making mistakes. And it starts when we're really small, actually, right? Like we're afraid of making a mistake and getting punished by our parents or whatever it is, right? There's a lot of distortion around making a fool of yourself or making an error. And so I just wanted to talk about this because what I've noticed for some people is how they are in their frequency resonance with regards to mistakes really is an indicator of how much they can grow. Because I've noticed that some people are so paralyzed by the fear of making a mistake, they don't ever go outside of their comfort zone. And as a result, they don't grow very much. And the opportunities and the possibilities that they have available to them aren't really there. So that's why we're talking about this today. And the thing that you have to remember about making a mistake is that it's really that small s self, that ego mind self, that we've talked about before. When we have that perspective, it can be really difficult because we are, like I said, we feel that shame. We feel the perceived story that others might have of us. Like they may not even think anything of you. They may not even have noticed the mistake. But at the same time, we are so sensitized to it that we may not want to, move forward.
Yeah, exactly, Karen. And there's a quote that the master has failed more than the student has even tried.
Yeah,
so
exactly. And so unless you put yourself out there into the realm of the unknown and are okay with making a mistake, you're never going to grow out of the comfort zone and you'll never gain mastery. So exactly, right? And interesting, there are cultures where there's a lot of shame around making a mistake, right? Especially, I'm talking to all of you East Asians out there, okay? That is a massive lineage distortion pattern to clear and cultural distortion pattern. And it actually will keep you in a very small box. And it can be very paralyzing because people can live with that shame forever and never sort of get past it because it's so strong in that cultural distortion, that kind of cultural and lineage distortion pattern is so strong. So until we can release those things from frequency level, it kind of entraps people, into like a smaller box because there's no trying of something new. So I think it's an important thing to do. I've also heard, it's interesting, and I don't know if this is true or not, But I've also heard that for men, it's harder for them to try things that they don't know or they're not good at than it is for women. Because for women, when you have a baby, you have to try all these different things you don't know what you're doing.
Nope.
Right? And you have to just try whatever it is that you need to make the child stop crying, or whatever it is that you need to do in that moment to help your child.
Yeah.
And so, and there's all these cultural distortion patterns there around men. Now, I don't know if that's actually true or not, but I heard that somewhere. So whatever the case is, there's so much limitation around mistake, you know? And there's a lot of pressure culturally to be perfect. I mean, look at our social media, right? It's like all these lives where we're like, oh, everything's perfect, everything's glorious in our lives. And if a mistake is made, it's like ridiculed. It's interesting, you know? There's like a lot of like, on social media, like people will beat up people who make a mistake and they're public about their mistake.
Yeah, true.
It's kind of interesting.
True, and you're right. The way we're portraying ourselves is only those perfect moments.
Yeah.
Thankfully, a little bit more now, people are tending to be authentic, but even then, it's like you're choosing what authentic moment you want to put up.
Yeah.
So it's a lot.
So I think that there's a lot of pressure right now, and like, for example, even if you take something like singing, right, which is a very pleasurable human act, right? It's like you're not, you know, a lot of people sing in the shower or whatever. But if you're all of a sudden you're about singing in front of other people, not necessarily on stage, but you know, just even at a table or whatever, people will freeze up because they don't want to look dumb, and they'll say, "Oh, I'm not a good singer."
Right.
But it's not about being a good singer; it's about the pleasure of singing. Right. But this is the other thing that's great about frequency work, is that you start to gain internal strength. You start, because you become internally strong and you release your distortion pattern, your frequency resonance is higher. You really honestly start to care much less about what other people think about you. And you also, because you're clear of your distortion, don't perceive judgment where there isn't. You know, because we a lot of times will make a lot of assumptions about what other people think.
Everyone's judging us when they're not.
When they're not, they actually don't really care. It sounds terrible, right? They're thinking about their own problems.
Yeah, I was going to say they're always just thinking about themselves.
Yeah, exactly. They're thinking about their own problems. So we make all of these assumptions that limit us from having these more expanded experiences of just the joyfulness of life. And, you know, it's like, does it matter that you're not a pitch perfect singer? I mean, you're not performing in front of stadiums of people, but yet we put that pressure on ourselves because we don't want to look foolish. We don't want to make a mistake. We don't want to, you know, fail in some way. The more you strengthen, what happens is you gain an internal confidence. And that confidence is in yourself, in the knowing that you can transcend, right? That's what surrender from strength is, where you're in surrender only to pure source and your higher self. So in that, there's this implicit assumption that you know that you'll transcend in some way. Like, you'll figure it out. Like, you don't know what the answer is now, but that's okay. You'll figure it out as you go along, you know? And I think that in part is the power of frequency work that's not often spoken about, this internal strengthening. So you're like, well, I'm just going to give it a go. And how, because you're in surrender and more neutrality, you can then give it a go and adapt to whatever shows up.
Right. And I think we all know people like that, whether they became internally strong through frequency work or, I don't know, whatever else. But there's that authenticity that when they make a mistake, whatever, when they do or don't, whatever, people like that. Like my mom always said, nobody likes a perfect person.
Yeah, no.
Right?
Yeah,
like
you kind of secretly hate them.
You want to be authentic.
Yeah, totally.
Make the mistakes and be authentic about it. And then it's beautiful. It's life.
Yeah, exactly.
You know?
And in terms of what you're talking about in terms of authenticity, so when we make a mistake, here's what I'm going to say about mistakes. It's really important to take accountability. Because there's so many people in the world today that are on the public stage that are not taking accountability. You're like, it's so clear that you made that mistake and judgment. You are human, however, and fallible. So it's okay, I feel like, to say, well, that's a mistake I made. I'm human. I will do my best to take whatever means or measures to correct that and then learn from it. Because, you know, the funny thing is people can either just pretend like it never happened and not take accountability, or people take accountability so hard, you know, and then they like beat themselves up, right? You know, and they just kind of get paralyzed by the fact that they screwed up.
Yes.
You know, and that can be really debilitating. So that's not like accountability, that's like self-punishment at this point, you know?
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that.
Yeah. So it's important to, when you have a mistake, to be like, okay, that's me and my humanness. So I made that mistake. Okay, yeah, I take accountability for that. I apologize for that. And what am I going to do so in the future that isn't there?
Yeah, right? And I can grow and become better from it.
Exactly. and I'll learn and not only grow and become better, who knows in that growing or becoming better what you'll discover that will help someone else or help yourself at a higher order or whatever it is. It's in that transcending of the mistake that's where the magic can be.
Yeah, and speaking of magic, especially I'm thinking of art.
Yeah.
Like a lot of mistakes in art end up being the best thing that ever happened, right?
Yeah.
I remember when I was glass blowing in college, like this is just one small example. I was making something, and with glass blowing, you have to keep spinning the glass, right? It's gravity.
Yeah.
You can't just like stop.
Stop.
And I messed up, and I was like, and I just stopped, and my partner was like, no, keep going, you know.
Yeah.
I ended up making this amazing, it was like a see-through apple, you could see, anyway, it was cool. And so that would have never happened without the mistake. And you see that a lot too in history.
Yeah,
you know,
totally.
mistakes end up being this amazing
thing. And not only just in art, in innovation.
Exactly.
Like how many things have been discovered because someone made a mistake?
Yeah.
Tons, right? He would have been like, oh yeah, we didn't know that was gonna happen at all.
Yeah, and then this came from it.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of people do really want to be comfortable.
Yeah.
And that discomfort of the unknown or trying something new can paralyze them, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So the thing is, like I said, the thing about mistakes is it's never really, people equate mistake with failure. Right. To me, it's only a failure if you don't learn and grow from it, right? It's a mistake. Yes, I mean, it's human to make a mistake, but how do you handle it? That's the thing afterwards. Like, that's the important piece. You know, it's like fear and courage. Like, you know, it's not like people are fearless and they go, like, have courage. And a lot of people have courage and fear at the same time, you know? And they just move through that fear, even though, and that's the courage, you know? It takes that strength of like, oh my God, I'm terrified. I'm still going to do this anyway.
Yes.
Right? And it's the same thing. It's like with mistake, it's just like, okay, well, I screwed up. And I'm going to like learn from this because it allows me to observe, get better, become stronger, perhaps innovate, you know, and all that is really important. So to me, releasing the distortion pattern around this is really important because it makes us process through that faster. Does that make sense? Like sometimes we can get hung up. The mistakes we've made, we can live through them, you know, because they happened years ago. Like I know people, when they come into sessions, they are still living the distortion pattern of a mistake they made 25 years ago. And I'm like, whoa, this distortion pattern, I mean, you did this thing 25 years ago. You're no longer the same person, but they hang on to that memory of that. So once you can clear that distortion, finally they're like, okay, free. Now I can move into, and that's a time loop distortion too, it pulls them back into the past. So now you can be more fully in the present and able to just respond to what's happening. So I think that's a really important thing.
Yeah, and also confidence. Like I'm thinking about where does true confidence really come from? It's not perfection.
No.
It's not. It's like how, like you were saying, how you react to the mistake and how you overcome. And then you're like, right? Even more strong, like that internal strength.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's a good thing.
It's a really important thing. So for those of you who want to go deeper with this, I mean, we have the group frequency calibration that's associated with this episode that you can watch. And then I'm going to give an entire group frequency calibration for purchase, which will go deeper on this to help people who kind of get stuck with mistake or feel like they can't move forward because of a mistake they made in the past or whatever it is, just to help give you more momentum. Because really, I mean, again, the thing is, a mistake can be your ally and it can be constructive if you have the distortion patterns cleared. So it's not like you're going to go, like skip into mistakes as if they're glorious, but it's more like you have that strength in knowing in yourself that you can transcend, that you can figure it out, that you will adapt. And that's the important part.
Right. And that you don't beat yourself up. And that you don't learn from, you know, it's a balance between those two.
Exactly. So you don't go into self-judgment, self-punishment, stasis, basically, right? And then that doesn't help anybody.
No.
So the point is to use it as a form of momentum, as a form of catalyst, as opposed to as something that keeps you stuck in the same place.
Beautiful. Perfect, Karen. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And for those of you who are interested in starting to release the distortion patterns that keep you in this sort of paralysis in terms of fearing mistakes or how you respond to mistakes after the fact, then definitely check out the group frequency calibration that's associated with this episode to help start to release that. And if you want to go further with that, there is a GFC that will be offered on the website that will go more in depth. And if you are enjoying this series, please click on the subscribe red button in the right-hand corner of this video.
We're about to start the group frequency calibration, or GFC, where we actually do the frequency work and where change is catalyzed. To get to the GFC, click on the square that'll appear to the right or the link in the description below. It's time to bring in a new experience, a new consciousness, and a new world. Let's rise together.